Yeah, the Concert Champêtre is a really special piece. First of all, Concert Champêtre means basically, what's a good translation? Sort of like country concerto or country concert, or it's something. It's sort of a pastoral concept, but it also refers to Champêtre is a reference to, I think, paintings of Watteau, who's an 18th century French painter, and they're these sort of country amusements and entertainments, and so it's meant in a funny way to make fun of these paintings and to make fun of this artistic concept. But actually, the Concert Champêtre is a very amusing and very it's a very funny work. It's a very humorous work. Humorous not in the sense of like, you know, slipping on a banana and breaking your neck. I mean, that is funny, I guess, but like more ironic, you know, much more sophisticated 1920s humor. Poulenc was very young when he wrote this. Poulenc was 27 or 28 when he wrote this concerto. So you really see a young man trying out a new medium for him, trying out a new genre, which is the concerto. It's his first concerto, and writing for an instrument that had been dead for over 100 years. So, you know, the sense of innovation, if you like, is really mixing with this nostalgic quality. I mean, as far as modern music for cembalo goes, I don't like it when people evoke the Baroque. No, I think you should write new music and you should write it for the harpsichord. But only a genius like Poulenc can do it and make it work. If anybody else did it, I wouldn't think that nostalgic idea is effective. There's the occasional reminder of the cembalo's past, you know, which is to say old music, right? There's that reminder of it, of, you know, ornaments and sort of decorations that we associate with this frilly lace sort of the 18th century, but he kind of turns it on its head. It's kind of like looking at a landscape through the wrong end of binoculars. You know, it's always a joke. But it's, you know, technically speaking, that's a good question. I think he makes it grotesque sometimes. You know, he makes it sort of, he will exaggerate a point to show how ridiculous it can be, but it's never insincere. So Poulenc was, as I said, in his 20s when he wrote this concerto, and it was for Wanda Landowska, who was the first real concert harpsichordist. She wasn't the only one, but she was the best, and she was the first. And Landowska was a very important person in Poulenc's life personally as well. She had introduced him to his first boyfriend, his first partner, and she was a very important person in his personal life. And, you know, she was sort of a star, if you like, of that salon society of 1920s Paris. She was very sophisticated, she was very charming, she was foreign, she was Polish, of course, Polish-Jewish, but not too foreign for the French. And so people found that alluring, and she was a figure of a lot of admiration. And so she had, I think, a big role in reviving the harpsichord, because she realized that if the harpsichord is going to live, it needs to have new music. So this was a big step for her and for him. Yeah, I love this César Francks Symfoni. Of course, I said to someone yesterday, I said, oh yeah, they're doing the Francks Symfoni. He said, oh, which one? And I said, I think there's only one. There's only one symphony by César Francks. It's funny, a lot of French composers only wrote like one symphony, like Berlioz's symphony, César Francks, Chausson, I think there's one symphony. And what's special about the Francks is that actually, I mean, if you think about it, tonight, the program is a French program, but when the Francks Symphony was first performed in 1889, it was criticized for being too German. It was a very sensitive piece in Paris. I mean, they had just lost a war to Prussia, which became Germany, and so the idea that a national composer would go against the French national style was considered, you know, sort of gauche and not good. So it shows you not that much has changed in France. But I just love the sort of generally Wagnerian sweep of this concerto, but also it's actually in its form, which is to say in its structure, it is actually quite a conservative symphony. It's actually a classical, cyclical, well, I mean, being cyclical is not conservative, but the general form of it, for example, you have the introduction of the first movement, and then there's a bridge, and then he just repeats the introduction in a new key, because then that introduces a key for his second theme. It's like so textbook, this. And yet, all the thematic material has that Wagnerian longing and that yearning in it. I mean, a theme like or this kind of, you know, the endless phrase, if you like, the endless theme, is just so compelling. I just love the piece, and I love the way that he orchestrates it like you would be playing the organ. You know, he brings in this stop here and he brings in that stop there, and the colors he gets out of the winds is just it's such a thrilling piece that I did a radio show about it for BBC, but I have never heard it live. I have never heard this symphony live because no one ever does it anymore. There used to be a time, so I understand, I guess before I was born, that people performed it a lot, and then I don't know why people stopped performing it. But I mean, the Francks Symfoni, just to tell you how much I love it, I once made a piano version of part of it just to understand how his modulations worked. So I can't wait. Tonight will be the first time that I hear the Francks Symfoni live.
And you had like a favorite part of it. The third movement was...
Oh yeah, at the end. In the third movement, in the last like 2 minutes maybe, there's a part where, you know, all the themes are coming together. You have ba-da-da-da-da-da, and then you have ba-da-da-da-da-da, which is from the second movement. And then there's something else from the second movement, which is bum, 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 bum. And all these themes are sort of in this crucible. And then for an irregular number of bars, I want to say like 27 or 21 or some prime number or something, he goes into a Wagnerian fantasy land, and the harp is just, and then the orchestra goes, and you feel like you've been transported from Paris to Bayreuth, you know, for like 21 bars. And it's just such a magical moment. I think for even a casual music listener, this cyclical nature, which is to say that all the themes come back, and then he disturbs them and he interrupts them, will be very interesting, you know, even for someone who maybe technically doesn't understand music that well. So it's a good piece to program. They should program it more often. If an orchestra honestly programmed it close to where I live, I would go and hear it like all the time.